Good evening, family. Welcome. Happy Saturday. I'm so happy to see everybody. Check in. I'm going to wait just a few minutes to see who is online and who's going to listen to this good news. This is juicy breaking news. Well, it's breaking for some and just good, juicy news for others. So come in, family. Welcome. This is May the 30th, 2026, and the time is about 8:11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So check in. We're going to wait for the Soul Tribe to come in and introduce yourselves. Let us know where you're hailing from because we have a few things to talk about, mainly prosperity. So we're going to talk about prosperity and how prosperity has been promised and how we can see that prosperity is coming because June is slated to be a very exciting month. June is the sixth month of the year. Six is the number of humanity. And there are some other things that six represents, but I'll let you all tell me that. Come in, check in, family, and please let us know if you can hear me. Can you hear me this evening? You can hear me? All right. We'll wait till we get more people in the room. It again is May the 30th, 2026. And it's about 8:11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:12. So come in, let me know if you can hear me. Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me, and we'll get started very, very soon. Let me know how you're doing. Yes, I see more people entering the chat. Come on in the room. No music today because I'm out and about on my cell phone. So please check in. There's a lot going on in the background that many people just are not aware of. But we're going to keep you updated. So let us know how you're doing this weekend, and we'll get started very soon. Can you hear me? I don't see anybody responding, so all I can do is hope you all can hear me. Check in. We only have 2 more days to June, and that should be really exciting. So I hope people are getting their humanitarian projects together, and I hope people good are getting their currencies together. If you're invested in foreign currencies, that I hope you're categorizing them by country and writing down the amount that you have. And I hope, if you desire, that you're writing down the serial numbers to your currencies if you have them. If not, it's okay because, as long as you know what you have, you don't have to necessarily write down the serial numbers, but you should at least categorize them just to make it easier if you have foreign currencies. If you don't have receipts, that shouldn't be an issue because banks and wealth management centers have what's called a De La Rue machine, and they have other machines that will authenticate your foreign currencies. Good. I'm here. I'm glad you can hear me. Hi, Sister Rita and Sister Latricia. Brother Anthony, I'm glad you can hear me. So get your currencies in order, categorize them by countries and denomination. I gave the people in my private group a template of a categorization form, but you can create something like that yourself. Those people that are in a private group just got what I have, and I told them to make copies of them so that they can be organized. It's always better to be organized. The more organized you are, the quicker and more efficient the process will go through when it's time to cash in your foreign currencies. But this is an exciting time. I would encourage everybody to not only get your heart and mind ready, but also get your paperwork ready. So what I mean by paperwork is when you go to exchange your currencies, if that's what you're going to do, if you have currencies, you need at least 2 form of ID is what I heard. And you need a bill or some type of mail that comes to your house to prove your address. You might need a lease or a mortgage or just 2 different forms of bills just to prove that this is, where you reside, and 2 form of ID identification. It could be a passport, state ID, driver's license. If you are sovereign, whatever sovereign licenses you have, you want to make sure you take that or those things to the Wealth Management Center. Also, we're going to get into news today, but we're just talking about foreign currencies just to pass the time while people check in. But you want to make sure you're ready. I did talk to a wealth management person. What do they call wealth advisor at a bank? And I told my private group what that conversation was like, but I'll give the short version here. What my wealth manager said is that you can either have your currencies in a trust now, or when you go to the bank or wealth management center, they will have trust advisors for you present to help you decide which type of trust you desire for your currencies to go into. But they're not going to tell you what type of trust necessarily you should do. They're expecting us to do our due diligence to give them an idea of what type of trust we would like to have. So you're going to have a whole team. You're going to have wealth managers to assist you with managing your money. You're going to have trust advisors at the wealth management centers. You're going to have investors to teach you how to invest and to encourage you and advise you on what you should invest in or you could invest in. You're going to have bank perks. And what else? Just a whole people that can help you with land, real estate, real estate advisors. You're going to have a whole professional team for you. And that's not just for those that are exchanging their currencies, but the whole team for you is going to be for all of the people that's going to participate in the wealth transfer, which would be everybody on the planet. One of the reasons why the Trump administration is going so hard on or doing so much diligence on trying to figure out who is legally here in the United States of America is because in order to receive your sovereign wealth, you must be in the nation of your origin. Sovereign wealth funds are only for nationals. So if you are a foreign national on American soil, in order to get your wealth, your sovereign wealth fund is for you, but you have to be in your own country to receive that wealth. You have to be 2 things, a national, and you have to be in that country, the country of origin that will disseminate the sovereign wealth funds. On one of my last videos, somebody asked me, what is a sovereign wealth fund? A sovereign wealth fund is a trust comprised of funds like rare earth minerals, precious metals, being gold, silver, palladium, platinum, and other precious metals, real estate, stocks, bonds, land, hard assets, maybe even oil. And those funds will be disseminated to the nationals of that nation. Those funds are for the people, to invest in the people, to invest in the infrastructure, and to invest in outside funds or opportunities that will bring wealth into the country. So many other nations already have sovereign wealth funds, which are just trusts. President Donald Trump, when he came in 2025, said that was the first thing he was going to do. He created a sovereign wealth fund. You can look up that. And he said the sovereign wealth fund would be for the American people. He also said that these funds are to invest in the people, in humanitarian projects, in the infrastructure, and in outside opportunities to bring in money to the America. So that includes tariffs and trade agreements. A lot of people did not hear about that. And a lot of people may have missed it when he talked about sovereign wealth funds, because even if he has spoken about it, if you never heard about it, you may not have known that that was something to take note of. And we did report that here on the Dr. Kia Pruitt show. I reported the Sovereign Wealth Fund about it in January 2025. It's the first thing he did when he came back, even before he started taking inventory of the gold in Fort Knox, which, by the way, the last time there was a gold inventory was about $42 an ounce. Now gold is about $4,500 per ounce. So we know they're going to revalue the gold. He took inventory of the gold in Fort Knox, and he did mention that. He said, you think is there gold in Fort Knox? Do you think there's going to be gold in Fort Knox? I'm going to take inventory. He's also the only president that requested for inventory of the gold in the Grand Canyon. He did that under his first administration around 2017. He's always been invested in and interested in gold. In fact, in about 2012, and somebody can fact check me on when this actually happened, he accepted about 32 bars, I think it was it 32 bars of gold or 32 ounces of gold? He accepted gold from APMEX, a gold company who rented from one of his New York towers. And he said, I'm the first person to do this, to accept gold in exchange for a lease payment. He said, maybe this is an indication of what is to come. He wasn't even the president then. So he's always had an affinity for gold. This is why in 2017, he nominated Dr. Judy Shelton, an economist, a woman with a PhD in economics and business, to be the Fed chair. Now, she didn't make it, but she is a doctor. She has a doctorate in economics, and she supports the gold standard. So President Trump has always had a relationship with gold. Again, he accepted gold in exchange for APMEX, which is a very prominent precious metals company, leasing out one of his top floor of one of his buildings before he became president. He created the Sovereign Wealth Fund in 2025, and he said other nations do this. So a lot of people are kind of in flux about, especially immigration attorneys, President Trump questioning birthright citizenship, people overstaying their visas here, immigration statuses. He's questioning DACA, deferred action against children that were brought over here. They were supposed to be protected against deportation, but all those statuses, DACA, VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, change of status, birthright citizenship, even United States citizenship, those are all temporary statuses that were afforded to people that have migrated here for a time period, either to seek refuge, to work, to be on a humanitarian visa, to visit, to study here, to do certain things. And then after that time is up, they were supposed to go back home to their countries. Even those that are here on H-1B visas, a lot of those workers they've gotten extended amounts of time to be here. Many of them, I should say, are East Indians from the continent of Asia. So I've told you all 80 to 90% of the motels owned here in America are owned by the Patel family. Asians that are from one small country, are, some people say island, one small town in India. And a lot of them are saying we should be able to stay. We're anchored here. We've had children here. We've done businesses here. We own motels and convenience stores and all these things here. But whether you all know it or not, India actually has a reputation of not necessarily being the cleanliest. They have a reputation for being a developing nation and needing to be clean. People say it's very unsanitary. I'm trying to be, as respectful as I can. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but my point is, we appreciate all the help that people have done here and all the work that they've done here, but these developing nations have a lot that needs to be done, cleaning up the nations. I've had students that came to America from abroad. I worked in higher education that said, there are a lot of these developing nations have infrastructure problems, sanitation problems, sanitary problems, cleanliness problem issues with the water, issues with a lot of different things. Although they have resources, and it's probably because of the corruption in their leadership. However, those people that came here for better opportunities can now utilize everything they've used here and learned here to go back home to their nations to make their nations presentable and livable. So what you see is President Trump and the Trump administration ensuring that their countries are stable, their economies are stable, that most of the nations are at peace. Even in Iran, they're having peace talks. But Somalia, which was a war-torn area, many developing nations which were unsafe or unclean or lacked opportunity are now stable. And the reason why President Trump is making sure that they are stable is because, unbeknownst to a lot of people who've gotten very comfortable here from other nations, you have to be in your own country to receive your sovereign wealth funds. Guyana, just a few years ago, like 2 years ago, were giving out a stipend for all of their Guyanese nationals. But there were two stipulations. You had to be a Guyanese national, and you had to be in country to receive the stipend. You couldn't be abroad. You couldn't be in America even to receive that stipend. And that was just, for me, confirmation that this is what has to happen in order for people to receive their sovereign wealth funds. We can call it the National Economic Security and Reformation Act, or NESARA. We can call it the global version of that, the Global Economic Security Reformation Act. But however we spend it, you have to be in your own nation to receive these funds. Hi, Brother Tony. Brother Tony says, when I lived in Alabama, the hotel I lived in and worked at, they were friends with Patels up in town that owned a gas station. It was several of them. They all, if you look, YouTube it, YouTube claims that every single Indian that's here in America that owns the motels are from the Patel family. And they all come from one particular place, town. If you look at the pyramid that I think I finally put it up. I don't know if I put it up in the community section of my YouTube channel, but I will do that I've brought up for you many times. That shows the economic stratification, how each national is doing here in our country, in North America. When you look at how everybody's doing, the Indians from the continent of Asia they're at the very top in terms of how much money they bring in on average. It's over 100,000. That's what's reported. We don't even know what's not reported. They own 80 to 90% of the motels, convenience stores, liquor stores, gas stations, etc. Right under them are the Filipinos. Right under them are several other different Asian nations, which I thought was interesting. In the middle of the pyramid, when you think about economic stratification or layers, they call them white Americans, which are the Caucasians that are here. They're in the middle at $59,000 on average. They bring home a year per household, the household average. You got a whole about 5-6 people above them. And you have 5 or 6 different nations below the Caucasians or the white Americans. And at the very bottom, you have the African Americans. Everybody is doing better than the indigenous people here, the African Americans, people classified as African American. But all the nations here will call themselves, such and such American. I'm Filipino American. I'm Indian American. I'm this American. Sometime, but they'll let you know, oh, I'm Indian. Oh, I'm Indian, and we make it because we We live together and we have family values and marriage values. We have education, and that's true to a large extent. But it's also true that they've received preferential treatment. They've been given low interest loans or no interest bearing loans. They've been given food stamps, government assistance, welfare. Listen, welfare is not just TANF, temporary assistance to needy families. Any government assistance is welfare. Jobs, it's called brain drain when the companies and the government would go to these different countries and recruit all these people to come here to be doctors, lawyers, teachers, business owners, engineers, researchers, students. It took Mike Pompeo, who was the former Secretary of State, on February 8th, 2020, at the governors' conference to say, you governors have been complicit with the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, and you've allowed Chinese spies to come in as students, as researchers, as doctors, as lawyers, as bankers, and they've infiltrated every segment of our society. They've bought up land here, which we know they've bought up real estate by the military bases, farmland, all of that. And I have a record, a report card of how all you all have been doing, governors. This is the governors conference, February 8th, 2020. I have a record of how complicit you've been with the Chinese Communist Party. You need to do the right thing. I'm a former CIA director and I'm the Speaker of the House. I know what you guys have been doing. Do the right thing. Right before COVID. Then in March, they shut down the whole world, and a lot of those governors allowed that to happen, and they allowed this disease to spread. They allowed different protests in their states. They allow Antifa, Black Lives Matter to flood their cities and their states and tear up their cities and states and their businesses, because that's when George Floyd was unalived and Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky was unalived. And we don't even know why these people were unalived. The details. Is this a false flag event? Was it was it staged? Was it real? If it was real, the best thing to do is to have a peaceful protest if you want to, but you need to know what the lawful protest is. It's not even rallying in the streets. A lawful protest has to do with paperwork, actually. You actually document your grievance and you go through certain procedures to rectify your grievance. But if you want to rally and speak and protest or whatever, that is our right. Or, excuse me, that's a privilege. It's not a lawful definition of protest, though. But instead of being peaceful, a lot of these rallies were infiltrated by Antifa and Black Lives Matter, Until Freedom, and these other groups that were funded by billionaires. And instead of putting structure around it, these governors allowed them to run roughshod and tear up the businesses during those protests. If you didn't have a Black Lives Matter sign hanging in your businesses, they tore up your business under the guise of being concerned about people classified as Black or African American, colored, Negro, the indigenous people here. But on their website, they told you and me in the mission statement they didn't care about Black families or families classified. They said they were against the nuclear family. And they took money through Act Blue, which also funds the Democratic Party. So when you follow the money, you follow the real purpose and mission of an entity. So Mike Pompeo told all these governors in 2020, I'm watching you, do the right thing. Did they listen? No. We had not only Chinese spies, we had a lot of other spies, and still do, in our country. That's why people are really stressed out. They're paying their immigration attorneys to fight back against USCIS or immigration and President Trump administration. They're taking these people money left and right, promising them we're going to do our best or win your case to keep you here, even though many of you are here illegally. And when you listen to these attorneys online, they will say they know you've overstayed your visa. You're going to have to give a good reason for why you overstayed your visa. You can't lie about it anymore. They'll tell them. You can't just give any blanket reason. You can't say you didn't overstay your visa. It's commonly known that people overstayed their visas and did a change of status here in America, changing their status from a visitor or a student or a temporary worker or as child that was sent here to a permanent resident by applying for a green card, but they could stay here to do that. And they would stay here for decades. Follow some of the immigration attorneys on YouTube. They'll say, we know you stayed for decades and we know you've had families and we know you've worked. It's not fair that you get sent back home after you've been here all this time and you've had children, you've got married, you've been hiding out or not, because you didn't have to hide out before Donald Trump, came in. Just think about how glorious it's going to be when Trump goes out, I've heard them say. But we know you've overstayed your visa. Just give a good reason and hopefully that'll work. No, it won't. Because they've been really aggressive about moving people out that are here illegally. To the extent where they were saying if you self-deport, we'll pay you $1,000. Now they say we'll pay $2,600 and we'll pay for your flight and book the flight for you. And we will forgive any fines that the people have here. And we'll send your children home with you. But if your children have a legal right to stay here, we'll find a family for them. But many of them don't have a lawful right to stay here, because just because they were born in America does not mean that they automatically are granted or afforded the privilege, not the right, the privilege of United States citizenship. Because the 14th Amendment clause that was used to guarantee birthright citizenship for undocumented and illegal immigrants here, first of all, was not ratified, so it's unconstitutional, which makes it treasonous. Then it was an amendment that was added actually after the Civil War for the children of African American slaves. But it still wasn't ratified. It's still unlawful and unconstitutional. So it doesn't matter if people think it's legal or not. It's unlawful. And it's illegal. It's illegal because it wasn't ratified. But illegal means that it's not even legal or lawful according to the United States Incorporated, the corporation that overtook or usurped authority from the republic, our lawful government. So you have bloodline families that usurped authority from our lawful republic and then made themselves a corporation in 1871 and incorporated themselves as a nonprofit religious organization with the Pope as the head of it. And they were beholden to the British Crown. So the United States Incorporated, attorneys, administrative judges, which are not really judges, all of them are beholden to the British Crown. That's why they have to pass the bar, the British Accredited Registry. All court workers have to cease and desist. All policy enforcers that are their enemy combatants on our land have to cease and desist. They have to stand down. Police officers are being arrested. Attorneys are being arrested. Judges, administrative judges are being arrested and fired. And now President Trump is putting deportation judges in their place because attorneys and administrative judges have upheld the treasonous, unlawful, unconstitutional practices of States Incorporated and allow illegal, unlawful people to be on our lands, getting benefits and living on top of and better than Americans. I've shown you the pyramid. I've shown you the economic stratification. Indians at the top, those are the ones being challenged right now, saying, I don't want to go home. I have an H-1B visa. You got to go home. And it covers all these people that's over the original Americans, the African Americans or Black people, whose classification continues to change But people that are here will tell you that first, they're a national of their country. They're very proud of their country and they want the benefit of being American, but you cannot be an American. There's only one American. Those are the indigenous people that are here. If you don't know what American is, look up the 1828 Webster's definition of American. I've said it many times. I'll let people do their research on their own. The copper-colored races encountered by Europeans, but now applied to Europeans. It's applied to, but it doesn't make them American. They are citizens. They are the children or descendants of slaves that the Moors, the European Moors, the heavily melanated beings that had colonized Europe. Well, first of all, the original Europeans are heavily melanated, but then you had the Moors that had colonized the Europeans that they actually created. And then, through the Renaissance period, taught them certain things like what they call civilization, how to bathe, how to eat, how to do, because they were a new race. They brought the slaves over here on ships. Those are the slaves, as well as other beings that look, European. I don't know what their so-called ethnicity is. Those were the slaves, the Slavics, the Slavs. The Moors brought them here to colonize and conquer the indigenous people here, the Americans. So when you go to colonize or conquer a place, this is the art of war strategy. It's not personal. It's the art of war strategy. For them, it's not personal. You can either send in the military or you can send in your slaves, a colony of people to work for you and on behalf of your mission. So when the Moors, Moors, came here, they brought their Slavics, their slaves, their new races of being that they had raped, imprisoned, treated like property, and they gave them the lands that they conquered from the indigenous peoples. Now, it's important for us to not just assume that just because somebody has a little melanin, that they're not indigenous, because a lot of them married in with the indigenous people. But my point is, the 1828 Webster's definition of American is the copper-colored races encountered by Europeans, but now applied to Europeans. It's applied. You can apply something all day long. It doesn't make it so. And additionally, the people that came, immigrants that migrated here from all over the world, call themselves legal Americans or United States citizens because they have permanent residency. But all of those statuses, when you really look into, and I've done a deep dive on it with the Soul Tribe, you look into naturalization, nationalization, birthright citizenship, DACA, VAWA, temporary workers, all these visas, all of it was temporary. Every last one of them. And all of it was citizenship and property, chattel property of the United States Incorporated. Has nothing to do with the lawful government, the lawful republic. Well, the United States Incorporated is insolvent, bankrupt, defunct, no longer exists. The United States Incorporated reached the debt ceiling a long time ago, was bankrupt and forced to liquidate. It doesn't even exist. That's why we're still under a shutdown. A lot of people don't realize we're still under a government shutdown. They're calling it partial, but we're still under, and that's why so many people are losing their jobs, because the government cannot sustain itself. It cannot pay out jobs. It cannot pay to fly all the immigrants and migrants here, cannot afford to give them visas and temporary statuses and jobs and allow them to continually gain access to the indigenous Americans' trust. It cannot sustain them. It does, because the government does not exist. But the United States Incorporated, the so-called government, affords privileges, not rights. Sovereign rights are God-given. Like, you have a right to breathe. You have a right to live. But lawful rights are granted by the republic. Lawful rights. You have God-given rights to live, to breathe, whatever. But the Constitution for our republic affords us, that says that we should have the right to have a life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. That's for Americans. Everybody else's constitution for their republic grants or affords them rights to their landmass, their resources, and different rights for only the nationals. Everybody else have privileges. So when you have these entities, like these governments that were in place, these beings that enslaved humanity and overtook the people's lawful way of governing themselves and took over their tribal ways, they gave privileges to whomever they desired. But the thing about an entity granting privileges, they give privileges and they can take away. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. The government giveth and the government taketh away. The government cannot afford to grant any more privileges. So they're revoking their privileges. They're revoking citizenship status because they don't have anything to give anybody anymore. They're insolvent. It's not even about being mean, racist, unfair. They weren't supposed to be here to begin with because they weren't invited by the American people. The Americans, the indigenous or autochthonous people, misclassified as Black, African American, which actually is a categorization of produce and meat. See how they thought about us? Black is a legal standing, means that you're a slave or that you're better put, that you're dead, that you have no standing in law. All these different times we've been misclassified. Nobody else been classified or categorized several times or every other few years. These peoples, the indigenous people, were prisoners of war by the Moors from Europe that enslaved the people here. And the Moors from Europe, which people call the dirty Moors, are heavily melanated because most of them are not even human, but they shapeshift just like archons and reptilians, draconians. And they were doing to the Slavs or the slaves, the European slaves, the same ones that they civilized, they were doing to them what they've been doing to people all over the planet. Misusing them, harvesting their organs, drinking their blood, graping them, using their genetics to create other beings, just having a jolly good old time. That's what blackface was about. Chief Rod Hayes taught us about that. People and that the European people that were here on these lands that were entertainers would do blackface actually in homage to the Moors. They weren't making fun of copper-colored people. We don't even look like them Moors. We are Moors, Mours. We're not the same as the ones from Europe. They might be, the human parts of them might be cousins, but most of them aren't even human. The blackface was either paying homage to or mocking the beings that enslaved them in Europe. In Italy, they do the bull run where they still wear blackface and they taunt the bull. The bull represents the Moors, not doesn't represent the Moors, the African Americans or the indigenous people. They represent that bull run where they taunt the bull, represents or commemorates how the people in Europe and the Spaniards got victory over the Moors who colonized and enslaved them and kicked them out. The Europeans, the Spaniards, the Irish, they kicked the Moors out in 1492. That's when they came to the Americas to make us prisoners of war. And they brought their European slaves. And then they went all out and told all other beings and people to come over here. So we had all these different people, Europeans, to come here, and they settled in certain places, probably not even knowing they were being used to colonize the indigenous people. All they know is Heck, the Moors lost the war. They had colonized Europeans from 711 to 1492. Keep in mind, the original Europeans were melanated. But then you read the history books that say that the Moors conquered and enslaved Europe from 711 to 1492. It wasn't necessarily just the people that were already there, because the original Moors are melanated. It was, again, melanated beings that came from other land masses or extraterrestrials outside of this terrain. And they made it with people. These beings, Elohim, Anunnaki, custodians, all type of, they made it with the people. They colonized the Europeans, and they came here, did the same thing, but they brought and used the Europeans as their pawns. When you read Machiavelli by the Prince, the book The Prince by Machiavelli, and study his work, he says there are two ways to colonize a landmass. You either bring in a military or you bring in a colony. If you bring in a military, it's going to be very, very costly. You got to train them, you got to feed them, you got to provide them wives, because you're going to get young men. And there's a chance that these people that work for you will turn on you. But if you bring in a colony, prisoners, slaves, people at the lowest part of the stratosphere, the lowest caste, the lowest class, if you bring them in as colonies and you give them land, jobs, opportunities, resources, benefits, they're going to be loyal to you. You put them in entertainment. You give them the best jobs. You give them the land of the indigenous people that you made prisoners of war. You tell them they're better. You create an ideology called white supremacy. And then the people the colonies that were brought here, they didn't even know that white was the status of the indigenous people. Black was the status of the slaves, because they were landless. They had no wealth. They were mistreated. Black was they had no standing in law because they didn't belong here. It wasn't their country. White was the indigenous people status. But then you create an ideology called white supremacy, and you indoctrinate your slaves that you bring here and tell them you're better than the people that we conquered. Even if, and the colonists that came, they didn't know. All they know is they no longer are being mistreated in Europe. They got land now. And so the Moors that brought them here say, hey, we're going to bring your sick, your prisoners, your decrepit, your most heinous people you have here. Why? Because those people, when they are at the bottom, they're going to do whatever it takes to survive. The first law of nature is self-preservation. They're going to avail themselves of every opportunity. But when they get a chance, they'll tell you. By wearing blackface, by taunting the bull at the festivals. And, there are European nations right now that wear blackface, and when people that look black or African Americans or whatever, when they go to some of these European nations, oh, they're racist. I didn't know they were racist. They actually wear blackface. No, they're not. They're not racist. It's really a part of their culture to either say, hey, we conquered the Moors that conquered us. This is a celebration. Or some of them are actually paying homage to the Moors. However you look at it, commemoration that they conquered the Moors, paying homage to the Moors that were there. But the colonists that came here, in my assessment, were so happy to get away from being mistreated in Europe, given land, and now you indoctrinate them and tell them they're better than the indigenous people. Over time, they really start to believe that. Then you take their children and you put them in the schools and you indoctrinate them, they believe it. And even if they don't believe it or know it, it becomes a part of their culture. I got privilege. I have land, I have water, I have clothes, I have food. And then the indigenous people, being the people that they are, actually, they were getting sick by the Europeans that came here because they brought diseases. These are a new race of people. Remember, the Moors civilized them before they brought them here, taught them how to bathe, taught them how to clean themselves, taught them culture. So when they came here, the indigenous people were getting sick. You know about the bubonic plagues and all those plagues? The indigenous people started with like, oh, we're going to be here together. We're going to have to teach you all how to get along with us and how to do things, hygiene according to how we do hygiene. Because we can't deal with all this death and this sickness and disease and catastrophes that's been brought on these lands. Over time, you talk about generations now. People start to intermarry. They start to mix. They start to do commerce together. But you still, as the ruling class, the Orsinis, the Medicis, all these heavily melanated beings, Obradandi or something like that, the Shigi, these are Moors, heavily beings that are either extraterrestrial or extraterrestrial hybrids that hide out. They're the black nobility. They're called the blackamoors for a reason, because they're literally heavily melanated. They're not the copper colored races that were discovered here by Christopher Columbus, which was a Moor and his people. Those are the people that created the Ku Klux Klan. They're the hidden hand, the blackamoors, the black nobility. There's a black pope, a white pope, and a gray pope, the black nobility. This is why you saw circulating not too long ago videos of the Pope and Catholic Caucasian priests bow down to kiss the feet of what look like North Africans, which are actually blackamoors, Moors, beings, human hybrids, and some not human, that enslaved the whole planet. They were kissing the feet of them because that is who they work for. That's their overlord. Those are the ones that pull the strings while they got us fighting over certain things, fighting against white supremacy, racism, sexism, classism, fighting about feminism, all that created by the beings that enslaved the planet. And it's not just the Elohim. They call themselves elites or Elites or Elohim because that's what they are. They are the Elohim. They are beings that are not even human, some of whom made it with humans, the fallen angels, because the Galactic Federation deemed, once Enki, Enlil, and Ninser had created the Anunnaki, once those Anunnaki beings created the species called humans here on the planet, they weren't even supposed to do that. They did that against the council of the Galactic Federation. But once their father Anu found that out, and the Galactic Federation found that out, they're like, you definitely are not to mate with them. But they did it anyway, and they created the giants. And then you had Enlil, who said he tried to hide what he did to unalive as many humans as he could through the flood, also called the deluge. But then Enki came back to save a remnant of them. That's where the Noah's Ark came into place. But then many times they unalived as many beings as they could through what we call now resets. And we've had about 7 resets. So it wasn't just the Anunnaki, it was the custodians, it was many different beings that are not part of Earth that would come beyond the ice walls, because the plane, the plane is actually a plane, is flat, and there's a dome over the plane, and the so-called stars, moon, and all that reflects what's actually on the Earth plane. And then you have outside the ice walls, Saturn, Pluto, all these other places, the ancestral republic, the celestial lands where the souls that ascend once people die actually reside in. You have all these extra places outside the earth plane. Some of those beings would use their advanced technology to come over here to either manipulate humanity, mate with humanity, make deals with the presidents in place to give them advanced technology in exchange for using us for experimentation and enslaving us and trying to keep us from evolving. A lot of these beings do not appreciate the fact that we're so amazing that we can do more things than they can do. We can emote, we love, we can emote means we have emotions, we can ascend. Many of us used to be able to fly, we could heal ourselves. Our limbs, once if it broke off, it would just come replace itself. Because we have the DNA of the gods that seeded us here. Some of us are literally the gods that have returned. So when you hear people say, nobody, you can't say who can come to the land and who can't. Some of us created what you see. Some of us know that. Everybody's not ready for that conversation. But you have beings that come back here to manipulate humanity. And you have beings that are actually seeded from different extraterrestrials. And then you have a kind of a man. You have beings that were created from the genetics of the man or the human races that were created by the Anunnaki, thus mankind. That's why when that one explorer, so-called step foot on the moon, said, this is a huge feat for humanity and this is victory for humanity or something, and a giant step for mankind. So it's really nothing for the so-called human or man. It was a great thing for man, but a giant step for mankind, because man, they are beings that were seeded here by extraterrestrials. That's why pastors just recently admitted on social media, on YouTube, that there was a secret meeting where pastors were given a mandate to start telling their congregation that the God that they thought existed is not the God that actually seeded them on this planet. They were given a mandate to tell the truth about extraterrestrial life and how extraterrestrials seeded different races here on the planet. So if you read the Sumerian text, if you read the book of Enoch, if you read the Maccabees, if you read other books that, and if you read the Bible, there are 2 creation stories in Genesis. You know about Nephilim. You know about the sons of God that mated with or raped the daughters of men. They're just telling you that the extraterrestrials mated with humans and created their own beings. But once we were seated here, we were supposed to be able to do and continue to do the amazing things we did, like fly, like teleport, like heal ourselves, like be breatharians, like mate through parthenogenesis, which I'm just learning just like yesterday, early this morning, that there are hens that lay eggs without males, without roosters. I was like, that's parthenogenesis. Mary being able to have Jesus, whether you believe it or not, and whether it's a real story or not, is a story about parthenogenesis, about how beings were able to just create life without having exe or smex. We were able to do all these things, but then you have beings that will come here to do experimentations on us. They cut off our telomeres so we couldn't live forever. It reduced our lifespan. They did different things and experimented on us because we were left here once we were seated here on the planet to just figure things out. And no matter what these different beings do to us, experimentations, cut off our telomeres, grape us, harvest our organs, drink our blood, whatever they do to us, cause war, teach religion to keep us enslaved, to look outside of ourselves instead of looking within, instead of manifesting just by telepathy or speaking and communicating telepathically. They cut off our memory from all that. And no matter what they do, we still thrive. So the Galactic Federation said, that's enough of that. We're returning. to save our creation. And if you look at the creation that was at the bottom, now you can look at the bottom economic pyramid I'll show you. That's an indication of who the original beings were that were seated on this planet. So fast forward to recent times, they not only brought colonists from Europe, which was the new humans that they had created, the Morris or the melanated beings had created. Some people talk about what it was the mad scientist, the big-headed scientist, Yakub, how he created the Europeans. But you had beings that created, I mean, they seeded humanity of beings all across the planet. The Europeans were the new race. When they brought them here, they gave them benefits. But then you fast forward, they started allowing everybody to come here. Through the corporation, the dead entity called the United States Corporation, which was a entity, a government of control, a system of control. You bring a lot of people here, you give them benefits, you tell them they're better than everybody else, you give them white status. You look at the pyramid that I showed you, where all the races or nations of people that are here on our lands and in North America doing way better than the Caucasians and better than which they call them white Americans. But and everybody's doing better than the African American, the indigenous people. But all of them are given white status. Every last one of them classify as and have the status of white, because white is supreme. White means cleanliness. White is next to God. Whiteness, it means purity. It's the owner of the land. It's the ones who have privilege. You suppose, but that was our status, the indigenous people. You give everybody who come here white status. You tell them you're better than everybody. You give them privileges. You tell them to stay away from the African Americans and the black people and to stay out of their neighborhoods, but to exploit them and put the businesses in their neighborhoods, to put the liquor stores in their communities, the convenience stores in their communities, and the gas stations in their communities. And then you call it a food desert place so that you can get grants from the government to put candy, cookies, pop, chips in the gas stations and convenience stores and call it a convenient mart and a food mart, because you classified yourself as a food desert, when you know that that's not real food that nourishes beings, but it was another way to poison the indigenous people. Come on, somebody. Then you also put abortion clinics in their communities. Drugs, guns, the COVID remedy, all those tents so they can give you soaked shots against the COVID in our community, indigenous people community, called the Black community. And you commission the pastors, another nonprofit organization, to set up tents and to encourage their congregation and their flock to get this injection in them, which now is causing sickness, unalignment, dementia, and all type of diseases, cancer and all kinds, and causes a dis-ease of not being able to procreate. 501c3 is not a separation of church and state. That's a lie. It's a misnomer. It's a fallacy. If we think that they are separation of church and state, how come they didn't keep their doors open when COVID was here and the pandemic shut down the world? Aren't you supposed to go to the house of worship for fellowship? They shut those doors down, and many of them told their people to take the drugs. So the reason why President Donald Trump and the Trump administration is now overturning all of these temporary statuses is because you have to go to the land of your origin and your ancestry to get the sovereign wealth fund. You can no longer take the privileges, rights, the resources that belong to the posterity of the beings that seated them there. You can't do it. And to force yourself to stay on somebody else's turf in somebody else's house is egregious. It's unfathomable. But when you've been given privileges, you really think you have a right. And you start then becoming very entitled. I have a right to be here. I'm entitled to be here. I had my children here. My children have a right to be here. No, the 14th Amendment was for the children of African American slaves. That would be the indigenous people. And that amendment was not ratified as unconstitutional and treasonous. Do you really care about the law? Because it's against the law. And the attorneys that use that are against the law. They can push all the different judgments they desire. They're not going to win. You can win a battle, but you won't win the war. Talk about the attorneys and the judges. Why they're being arrested. When you hear them talking on YouTube, like, come on, everybody, we're going to make it through this, they sound scared. See, I can read energy. They're afraid. They're afraid. They know their time is up, and so do we. They have to cease and desist. Policy enforcers have to cease and desist. That's why a lot of people aren't being given tickets when they're pulled over by the policy enforcers. They know their time is up. And police departments all over America are shutting their doors, and the jobs and duties of the police department are rolling over into the sheriff's offices. Heaven is the pineal gland, and Christ sits in your heart. Come on. Thank you, Arv. Thank you, Megan. Thank you for sending stars, Reverend. In the God realm, we can zap each other. We came up with the white man to get us to come together, which still doesn't work because we forgot. Okay, I hear you. Thank you for all the gifts and the hearts. Thank you. But the first shall be last and the last shall be first, lady. I hear you. So President Trump is offering $2,600 to people who will self-deport or who will deport. Yes, deport. Look around. Everybody got black women bodies. Everybody looks up to blacks subconsciously. That's why they hate, because they lost their melanin but forgot consciously the memory wipe. Okay, thank you for contributing to the conversation, Paradox. And I'm reading comments, family. I'm not saying that, somebody's comments supersede somebody, or somebody's all comments necessarily the belief system that everybody should have. I'm just reading the comments. Hi, Kia, Dr. Kia. This is Chuck-a-Luck. Hi, Chuck-a-Luck from the Earth, Wind, and Fire camp. I was listening to just this morning while I was cleaning up. Hey, Chuck-a-Luck, we have a celebrity in the camp. He follows the Dr. Kia Pruitt show. You're amazing. We love you. I think he told us he's a bassist. Y'all say hi to Chuck-a-Luck in the chat. Throw some hearts. Throw some hearts in the chat for Chuck-a-Luck being amongst us, family. This is Chuck-a-Luck from the Earth, Wind, and Fire camp. What's your email? I want to send you something very important. You'll love it. Chuck-a-Luck, it is kiapruitt@gmail.com. They're sending you hearts, Chuck-a-Luck, from Earth, Wind, and Fire, y'all. Hey, 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 hey. This is so exciting. Thank you for being here. We are honored. We are thrilled. We feel so special that you took the time out of your busy schedule, out of your celebrity status, okay? We love your music. We love Earth, Wind, and Fire. It's high vibrational music. I have nephews and uncles that play your music. My aunts and uncles, my daddy used to play your music. I play your music. So my email is kiapruitt@gmail.com. That's K as in king, I as in intelligent, A as in awesome, P as in pretty, R as in regal, U as in united, I as in intelligent again, T as in terrific, and another T as in terrific. kiapruitt@gmail.com is my email. Somebody put it in the chat for me, please. Yes, Hispanic equals white. I've had Hispanic people to tell me they grew up in their country classifying as white. They were taught, their teachers told them, you're white. I mean, I'm not even mad at them, upset. That's how they were conditioned. Yep, check a luck from Earth, Wind, and Fire is here. Okay, you got it? So in the chat, your name is Charlie Hosh Jr. Thank you, Brother Charles. Thank you so much for being in the chat here. I can't wait to see what you send me to my email. I know you had told me before you needed my email, and I did submit it in the chat, but you were probably gone by then. So what's going on right now, family? Thank you so much again. I appreciate you for being here. I appreciate all of you as well. So what's going on right now is that President Trump is challenging immigration because everybody has to be on their own land, the land of their ancestors, wherever they're national, whatever the first part of when you say I'm Pakistani American, I'm Indian American, I'm Japanese American, that first part, that's the land of your ancestry. That you're a national of that land. You're a foreign national on our lands, and you're a United States citizen, not an American. United States citizen. You were afforded permanent residency, but even permanency is temporary because it is based on the I forgot the proper word, the discretion of immigration. USCIS, they use their discretion to let people stay here. Now they're using their discretion to say people have to go home. But the overall benefit is that you are going to have wealth. And when you listen to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he said, we're going through a transition period, but we have a migratory problem here where everybody was just flooding our borders, most of whom are illegal. I would venture to say unlawful, which is an egregious offense. He said we're going through a transition period. It's going to be a little uncomfortable as we go through this transition, but in the long run, it's going to benefit everybody. It will, because everybody's going to be wealthy. Everybody has different funds, sovereign wealth, resources that will serve as a way to liberate them. And everybody's going to get what looks like a universal basic income. Those are funds that we call Nasara funds. But you have ancient dynasties that have been accumulating wealth for decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years, that's using that to liberate humanity. That's why I tell everybody, if you're interested in wealth accumulation, do it. It's not just about enriching yourself. It's because if this ever happens again, God forbid, your family will use their sovereign wealth fund to help liberate humanity, because you'll have so much. You'll be like, I'm going to set the captives free. I'm going to make sure everybody has a certain amount of money every year. That's what's going to happen. Qatar and other oil-rich nations already do that. They give their people, their nationals, money. So be encouraged. Please don't be stressed out about AI taking jobs. When they take jobs, that means you'll be able to work your land and have family compounds and grow food and sit on your land and enjoy living like a wealthy person, a wealthy national on your land, using your resources, eating the food that you grew like your ancestors did. And AI and all that's here, you'll use it for your benefit. So let's see what's going on. President Trump is offering $2,600 plus a booking a ticket and forgiving fines, but everybody's record will follow them. If you want to apply for green status or permanent residency, you have to now do it in your own country, because people were here waiting for that process, no matter how long it took, overstaying their visa, but getting permanent residency and a green card, working before they were even legal while they're waiting on that green card, and accessing the trust and getting government benefits. Then you have men bringing in their wives from all over the world. And if they had multiple wives, they would bring them, let their women have children here through birthright citizenship. Their children would all become permanent residents or citizens, United States citizens. They would get ties to the land, rights and claims to the land, and their parents would then get benefits through the child. And then all those other wives, which are not recognized by the United States government. We only recognize the one you did the paperwork with. Now we recognize them as baby mamas, But as baby mamas or single women, they get welfare benefits like food stamps, Section 8, temporary assistance to needy families, Medicaid, and other benefits through their children because their children were United States citizens. The DACA, deferred action, people abroad that would just send their children here and they get all these benefits and they were protected against deportation. Baby, in the term deferred action against children, deferred means it's put off for a time. You're not protected forever or permanently. You're protected temporarily, deferred. It's been put off. It's been delayed. I'm trying to figure out the dissonance, why people aren't making the connection and still trying to tether themselves to somebody else's land and somebody else's resources. And these are the same people who say the land doesn't belong to anybody. You can't determine who can come in and out of your country. We'll leave your doors to your house and your car open, unlocked, so that anybody can come in and out as they please. And they can run roughshod and practice their behaviors, eat the food in your car, bring their relatives into your home, bring their guns, their drugs, their children, their culture, their behavior, their food, and speak their language in your house. And let it be a revolving door perpetually, in perpetuity, however you say, forever, permanently. And then we'll see if you really believe there shouldn't be borders, because nobody from America can go to any other country and have birthright citizenship. America is the only place that happens. Nobody in America can go have a baby and that baby all of a sudden becomes a permanent resident and a citizen of that country and get a passport, and then the parents get the benefits. Nowhere else do you get government benefits because you somebody's baby mama that dropped off your child and you treated above people. No place in the world. Did anybody care about the African Americans who were at the bottom of the economic stratosphere, who were prisoners of war, who were told you are less than, you are 3/5 of a person, you are a slave, you have black status, meaning you have no legal standing? Did anybody care that people were taking advantage of our lands and made golf courses and golf territories on our sacred grounds or on our burial grounds, and that they made the cathedrals into their churches and their hospitals and their playgrounds and their Masonic temples? Did anybody care that everybody in the world were told you can come here but stay away from the black people, exploit them, give them drugs, do all the things I mentioned before? Did any nation say, come and have your child here, they'll automatically get citizenship? Because all these nations that saying, oh, we had it so bad in our country, we lack opportunities, there's no jobs, there's war over here, we were mistreated. Did any of their nations say, hey, black people, you were prisoners of war, mistreated, disrespected, disregarded, discriminated against, told you were 3/5 of a person, lack opportunities, were redlined, have deed theft, right now to this day, have written in the deed that says don't sell the land to black people, even though it is the land of your ancestors? Did anybody care and say you lack opportunities, so you can just come over to our land and you can have citizenship? You can send your babies over here and have deferred action against deportation called DACA. You can come over here and marry one of our nationals, lie and say he abused you, and get a Violence Against Women's Act fast track to the green card, Section 8 welfare benefits. Did anybody say, look, y'all lack opportunities over there? The government enslaved you. The government caused war against you. Because these are the people say, well, your government is the one that made my economy so bad, so I have a right to come over here. Did anybody do that for us? No. So we're going to make this equitable. That's why President Trump even talks about with tariffs. People came over here. Companies did business with us, imported their goods here. There were no taxes on their imported goods that were imported here. But if we imported goods to their country, they put taxes on us. Make it make sense. The government, though, that used to tax these other companies and countries, turned inwardly to tax we the people. Who did they start with first? All you got to do is read Motu Proprio, Pope Francis' letter to Obama in 2014 that said our time was up. He said it's been our policy to enslave African Americans and treat them as chattel property to pay off our debts. And then we made it our policy to tax everybody else to pay off the debt. Because the Declaration of Independence, he didn't say this, Dr. Pruitt is saying the Declaration of Independence did not end slavery, it expanded slavery. So now we're in the 250th anniversary year of the Declaration of Independence, America's birthday. It's not America's birthday, America's always been here. It's the Pangea, it's Turtle Island, the North Gate, North Africa, however you, Tamaria, I don't know, there are many names for it. It's not America's birthday. Not the landmass, it's the United States of America. It's the at 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which was independent from the British Crown on paper. It expanded slavery. It went from a man or a family owning slaves to the government or the corporation owning everybody and treating everybody as chattel property. But let's talk about the 250th anniversary commemoration. It's supposed to be a huge celebration this year. And to commemorate it, President Donald Trump is coming out with a $250 note. But it's held up in litigation right now because Congress is trying to fight back. They don't want President Trump to come up with the $250 note. This is to commemorate the 250th anniversary. There was a federal law dating back to the 1860s that prohibits President Donald J. Trump's signature on a $250 bill. So, according to that federal law saying that, President Trump cannot have his name on a dollar bill, what it says in 1860, it says that no living person can have their name on a dollar bill. To bypass this, Representative Joe Wilson proposed the Donald J. Trump legislation or bill. Right now, they're saying that it's stalled in the Financial Service Committee. But it don't matter what's stalled because the $250 bill ain't the only bill that's, or isn't, excuse me, I am college educated. Let me off toss it is. Stop speaking Ebonics. The $250 note is coming out. But even if that one did not, for some reason, come out quickly, I don't know if you knew this, but President Trump's 100 note is slated to go into printing in June this year, 2026. June is the 6th month. 6 is the number of humanity. Somebody else tell me what 6 represents. June is significant. Listen, if you look at that, look at the note, the Trump note, the 100 note, it has a gold inkwell on it and a golden pen to represent that it's gold back. If the gold back Trump note goes into printing and is slated to be released in June, it stands to reason that the gold standard is coming out in June or very soon after. I'll say it again. If the Trump gold back note, we know it's gold back because the gold inkwell is on there, it's slated to go into printing, look it up, June 2026. That stands to reason that the gold back currencies are now being circulated, that we're now on the gold standard. This is why behind the scenes, and I've been reporting this for years, all the states, as state after state started repealing or removing the state sales taxes from precious metals, I said, listen, when it was 13 states, I said, it's 13 states right now that recognize silver and gold as legal tender. And what they did, they just removed taxes from precious metals because you can't tax money. Then as state after state started doing, I would come to my podcast and say, hey, it's another state, and each podcast kept getting taken down. I was silenced on social media. One channel was taken down for years. LinkedIn, Twitter still won't pay me. Facebook, YouTube, they did not want this word out, but now, as Chief Max says, they're going to get this work. Now it's 45 states that we know of that have removed the taxes from the sales of precious metals. This is also why central banks all across the world have been accumulating gold in record numbers over the last 10 years, preparing for the gold standard. This is why all banks that remain, many banks, I should say, have collapsed and done away with. They've been wiped out. The ones that remain have to be Basel III compliant, meaning they have to recognize gold as a tier 1 asset. In layman's terms, it means all these banks that remain have to recognize gold as money, not the United States dollar as money, but gold is the standard. Along with Basel III compliancy, they had to have gold and foreign reserve notes called tier 2 currency in their coffers. Sometimes they'll speak in terms, in codes. You're like, what's tier 2? They just say you gotta have tier 2 assets and tier 1 assets. Tier 1 assets is gold. Tier 2 assets is accumulation of different assets, one of which is foreign currencies. I did a report called Good News for Currency Holders. Banks met globally to determine their preparedness for the foreign currency exchange. And they said 2 years ago, we're ready. Thank you for the Cash App gift. 2 years ago, they said we're ready. We have gold and we have foreign currency reserve, foreign currencies. Now our banks have to all be compliant. They have to be transparent. And they can no longer steal the money, do bail-ins from the people. So in 2024, the Supreme Court of the United States overturned the Chevron doctrine, which limited the powers of the government. But they went further. They said the Chevron doctrine gave the government unlimited powers. We're overturning that. They went further. They said the government is unlawful, unconstitutional, and treasonous. And all the judges that went along with the shenanigans have committed treason. And all the judges that knew of judges that went along with the enforcing the deep state rules, statutes, codes, and policies of the government, any judge that knew of a judge that did that, they committed misprision of treason. So you have the government committing treason, the judges that went along with it also deemed as treasonous, and the judges that knew of a judge that did nothing about it committed misprision of treason. Treason is a high offense. The penalty for treason is, at the very least, military tribunals, frozen assets, and at the same time, you have the bringing up a court case against Biden, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, and 385 members of Congress because they participated in voters fraud. And they said if it's found out that they did, then they will have to stand down. They have to go through military tribunals, have their assets frozen, and never serve again. All of this is happening at the same time. In addition, if you have Esquire behind your name, you have a title of nobility. According to our Constitution, nobody with a title of nobility can write laws or serve the people. Because if you have the title of nobility behind your name, like Esquire, that means you had to pass the bar, the British Accredited Registry, which means you work for the British Crown and not we the people. They've all been working together. This is why the judges and the attorneys are trying so hard to get the immigrants to remain here, because they're all a part of the deep state, the Illuminati, the Elohim or elites, the bloodline families that enslaved us, whether by birth or by pledging to secret societies that supported and upheld what they call the king, and some call white supremacy. But when you know what white means, and you know who the supreme beings are on these lands, you know that the Moors who enslaved and made us prisoners of war tried to usurp our status as the free white persons on the land. And actually they were talking about themselves having supremacy, and they made The Europeans think that they were the ones white by giving them the classification of white, and everybody else that came over here the classification of white, only to now turn on them and say, we've used you enough. We washing our hands. You got to go back. But what's really happening is that the Galactic Federation and the beings that seated us here is saying, you've had your play and your time, talking about the beings that enslaved us with whom we created. You got to go home. And we're not, some of us are not just the ones that they created. Some of us are the creators that have returned in flesh to liberate humanity. We are the ones who seated humanity here in the flesh. We reincarnated as it's what they say, for such a time as this, to liberate humanity. Trump said one time, I'm the only one who could do this. He is. Some of you have the same testimony. You're the only one that could do it because you were the one that didn't care about what people thought, how they treated you. You was going to stand 10 toes down and tell the truth. You're going to say, don't take those so-called cures to poison yourself. You are going to say, don't mistreat people. You continue to say, keep your energy in check. Stay focused. And you know only you could have done it. You decided to come here to liberate humanity. I decided to come here. So the beings that seated us here, they've returned. That's why the pastors got that memo. So what's in the news now is that Trump's currency is coming out in June. If you recall, the United States Treasury Department approved Trump's plan to phase out all paper dollars. That's the United States dollar. They then came back and said they approved Trump's plan to come out with his own currency with his signature. That currency is gold backed, and it will be printed by the United States Treasury Department and not the Federal Reserve central banking system. The Treasury Department is a part of our republic, our lawful government. That gold-backed currency, if and when it does come out, which they say will happen in June, but if you look at the note, you look at the note that's on Google, it says 2024 at the top. That means they started printing this and planning this. And they planned it a long time ago. Remember I said little by little and then all at once. All at once things change. Little by little things fall apart. Little by little change happens. Then all at once. They've been planning this. There was a book called Wishes and Rainbows that the Federal Reserve put out years ago that talked about how they knew they were going to have to crash the system and go back to the gold standard. Bix Weir talks about that on his channel called Road to Root. I've been following him for almost a decade. He was a former banker. That's when he woke up and he was like, what? I work for the Federal Reserve. We've been on fiat dollar, and they actually have a coloring book called Wishes and Rainbows, where they talk about returning to the gold standard. But it couldn't happen until now, because at the end of every empire, they spend as much money as they can. They print up as much money as they can. They rack up the debt. They buy themselves assets, and then they crash the system and return to a sound monetary system, which is the gold standard. They print as much money as they can. They rack up the debt. They buy themselves assets. They crash the system, and they return to a sound monetary system, meaning the gold standard. That's called the crack up boom. We're at the empire. That's why King Charles came over here and gave a speech to President Trump and Melania. So that new Trump note is coming out, although it says on the note 2024, June. It's gold back. We're on the gold standard. There are articles out that says 45 states agree to returning back to gold. And when you read the articles, it says they removed the taxes from the sales of precious metals. They've been passing bills to do that, to make silver and gold legal tender, meaning you can buy local goods and services with silver and gold right now. That's why you were hearing about gold backs. This is why after the Supreme Court of the United States overturned the Chevron doctrine, which shrinks the power of the government, and the government, by the way, has 445 agencies, FBI, CIA, HOAs, which is a part of Department of Defense and all other things. 445 have to cease and desist after they overturned the Chevron doctrine. The Supreme Court did that in 2024. In June of 2024, they came June 2024. Here's another. We're back in another cycle of June. This is 2026. The Trump notes coming out. But in July of 2024, the Supreme Court of the United States said that state-sponsored banks can operate separately from the Federal Reserve central banking system, and they have their own charter and issue out their own gold-backed currencies. We're on the gold standard. That's why they get phasing out United States dollar. That's why countries all over the world stop trading with the dollar. That's why countries all over the world stop buying up United States Treasury bonds. They're dropping the Treasury bonds. They're not buying United States debt. That's why the United States can't afford to bring a bunch of immigrants here and pay them off. Because they're out of money. They're defunct. They don't exist anymore. So we're on the gold standard. They're phasing out all paper currencies. The Treasury Department just said that they approved Trump's plan, but they've been done that. That's why we hardly use dollars and coins now. We use electronic system. So last month, when the article came out from the Treasury Department that said the Treasury Department approved Trump's plan, or from other news outlets, the Treasury Department approved Trump's plan to phase out paper currencies. The latter part of that report says to use cryptocurrencies and gold coins instead. Cryptocurrencies is not crypto. Bitcoin is not CBDCs. States have already overturned and outlawed central bank digital currencies, which was part of the United States Incorporated. People just didn't follow that. They missed it. They've been doing it for the last 5 years. They're using a cryptocurrency because that's the word most people understand or know. What they're saying is the Treasury Department approved Trump's plan to phase out all paper currencies to use digital assets. That's what they mean by cryptocurrencies, and gold coins instead. Then they came out and said the Treasury Department approved Trump's plan to use his own currency with his signature on it, something that's never been done before. A living president on a note. But it's going to be the transitional currency. Some people still want to use dollars, but it's really probably a commemorative note. Where they said it's to commemorate the 250th anniversary. So some people might use it, some people may, and whether or not we'll use it, I'm not sure. Right now, we're already using digital assets. Some people are already using gold, silver, goldbacks. If you go to goldback.com, put in your zip code, they'll tell you which merchants in your city and state right now that accept gold and silver as legal tender. In Florida, you can use it for certain things. So get you some goldbacks while they're only $10. When I first started reporting about goldbacks, which I was calling gold aurum notes back then, it's 24 karat gold on a note that's used for local goods and services, legal tender. At that time, when I reported 10 years ago, they were only $1. Now they're $10. It's an inexpensive way to own gold. It's 24 karat gold. It's a denomination of gold. A percentage of a gram of real gold. That's why 45 states behind the scenes have been passing bills to remove taxes from precious metal sales, because they knew we were returning to the gold standard. They're like, we're going to use the tools of the deep state, passing bills, legislation against them. Since they don't want to acknowledge the Republic and the Constitution for our Republic, we'll use their system. That just like Donald Trump is using executive orders to take down the deep state. That's their tool. He is the last sitting president of the United States Incorporated. By the way, this year in June the 14th, he'll be 80 years old. What does the number 8 represent? If you know numerology, somebody put in the chat, what is the 8? 8 is my life path number, so I know what it means. President Donald Trump will be 80 on June 14th, 2026, the same month that the Trump note would come out. June is the number 6, right? Represents humanity, like a pregnant woman. What is 8? 8 represents thank you, abundance, new beginnings, Thank you, quiet waters deep, new beginnings. Rising goddess said abundance. Z unpacking life said abundance. Danielle says new beginnings. Yes. Wildfire says infinity because you turn an 8 on its side. It's the number of infinity. New beginning. Yes. 8 means money. 8 means infinity. 8 means suddenly. Copper color. Thank you. Arv. Thank you. Robert. Thank you. Just me. Thank you. James. Thank you. Wildfire. Thank you. Dan. Hi, Sister Janine. Our moderators in the house. It was the corporation, not the government. Right? The corporation, right. Oh, you're the 8th child. So completion. Yes. So on President Trump's 80th birthday, he turns 80. The deep state is going to have a no kings protest on President Trump's 80th birthday. They're saying no kings. They're going to kick it off in New York with this huge concert called Rise Up, Sing Loud, or something weird, something interesting. But who's going to a No Kings rally? Who really cares about people protesting what Donald Trump's doing? It's interesting that they chose to do it on his 80th birthday. So he'll be 80 this year. The Trump note is coming out in June during his birthday month. 80 represents abundance, prosperity, new beginnings, family. The note that's coming out commemorates the 250th anniversary year of the Declaration of Independence, of freedom or independence from the British Crown. Charles came here to give a speech to President Trump this year during the year of the 250th commemoration of the Declaration of Independence, signifying that Americans really are free. We finally have our sovereignty, freedom, and prosperity back. You see all the clues. And then meanwhile, the No Kings are going to protest in New York to be the antithesis of what we already know is happening. We're on the gold standard. So again, if the Trump note, which it is coming out in June and is backed by gold, you can look at it, see the gold inkwell on it. It's coming out on his 80th birthday, which represents prosperity and abundance. No, it stands to reason, and not can we. It stands to reason that we're on the gold standard. We are to expect prosperity, abundance, and new beginnings. Meanwhile, speaking of prosperity, Kevin Warsh, who is the Fed chair under the President Donald Trump administration, who was sworn in May the 22nd of this year, 2026, promised Americans unmatched prosperity. You can't make it up. Kevin Warsh, and some people say he also goes by the name Walsh, because a lot of times they change their names so they can kind of fit in, so you can't tell where their bloodline is from. Kevin Warsh, Warsh, or Walsh, depending on, I guess, however he wants to spend it. He is the chair of the Federal Reserve, promised America unmatched prosperity during his speech when he was sworn in on May the 22nd. Interesting thing about him is when he was nominated by President Donald Trump called him central casting. Look it up. And I thought that was very, very important to note, because as soon as he was nominated, President Donald Trump, John Tavius, you know how we like to spin people's names. We're going to blackify that name. We're going to slangify that name. John Tavius Trump called him central casting. And then economists started saying, Kevin Warsh said he's going to do, I forgot what it's called. There's this economic principle he's going to put in place, according to them, that is going to allow the government to steal money or savings from the American people to pay off the debt. So when you had all these economists and people on YouTube saying, oh, Kevin Warsh is going to, steal Americans' taxpayers' dollars to pay off the debt, and this is evil and this is wicked, I said, did y'all not hear President Donald Trump call him central casting? President Donald Trump know what people say they're going to do, and then he's going to make them do what they better do. He came out on May 22nd and says, I promise unmatched prosperity. So it doesn't matter. I don't know if he's good or bad. He's central casting, according to President Donald Trump. He's going to make sure, or what he's saying is he's speaking in codes because they all speak to each other. He's speaking to the other elites, Elohim, elites, people in power, and saying, this is the year of unmatched prosperity. Y'all believe in the Federal Reserve, he's saying. Y'all think I still work for the deep state. But the people that ride with Donald Trump know that the Federal Reserve was put underneath the Treasury Department under Trump's first administration, which means the Republic is now back online because according to the Republic, any entity that the only entity that can deal with money, banking, prosperity is the Treasury Department. Putting out money. That's why Trump's dollar, new currency, is gold back and is being minted by the United States Treasury Department. So he like, look, I work for President Trump. But for the people that think that the Federal Reserve has power, I keep telling everybody, some people still live in 3D. That's their prerogative. So they're like, oh my God, the Federal Reserve still has power. Warsh said he's going to use this principle that allows the government to steal savings from the people, and that's how they're going to pay off the debt. That's what they believe in. If that's what they want to believe, that's what they choose to believe. That's their prerogative. He spoke out of his mouth unmatched prosperity. So the Treasury controls Kevin Warsh. That's why the Treasury deals with all money. That's why earlier this year, they reported $1.7 trillion of student loan portfolio is now being turned over from the Department of Education, which is part of the government that had to be downsized, one of the 445 agencies. 1.7, you see the number 17, trillion dollars was transferred from the Department of Education to the United States Treasury Department. And the spokesperson for the Treasury Department said, yeah, we're going to take that because we are the experts when it comes to banking, money, and finance. And it's true. They're the only entity that can deal with that. And they said the first people we're going to help or deal with are the people whose student loans are, what do you call it? When your student loans are in default. I'm on the lookout for those student loans being forgiven. The Treasury Department said, we got it from here. And then you read the articles, it says, and in the report, this is part of President Donald Trump's plan to dismantle the Department of Education. You also, when you read reports, you learn that the Department of Education was significantly downsized. Not only were they significantly downsized, the federal Department of Education, but administrators all across the lands here in the Americas have gotten an email that said, as of August, your services are no longer needed. I know some of those people. The Department of Education, the Federal Reserve, the IRS, the FBI, and the CIA, even though they're still doing their job of arresting judges, lawyers, attorneys, and all these other people that broke the law, when they get done doing that, they're going to all have to stand down, including the policy enforcers. And President Donald Trump is going to step down. The man is 80. No living president can be on a bill. They're working to circumvent that, but that kind of made my heart flutter. Like, God, please don't let nothing happen to him. If they're saying no living president can legally be on a bill. You know, they like to tell you what they got planned. But if he steps down or something transpires, he admitted himself, I'm the last president. A lot of people are like, he's the president of the republic. I don't know about that. He's the last president. He's 45 through 47. He was elected. But we know the Electoral College and some other people, the military chose him. So he'll be 80 this year. 8 is the number of beginnings, prosperities, abundance, money, infinity. Warsh, the Fed chair, said he promises unmatched prosperity. The deep state in New York going to have a No Kings rally on President Trump's birthday. President Trump is a Gemini. His birthday is June 14th. Sheikh Jacob Bey told us represents white supremacy, and it is coded messaging for one king must fall for another to rise up. 14 backwards is 41, which represents kings, which is all about coded messaging, letting you know that the kings and queens have returned. Those are the indigenous people that were treated last. The last shall be first. So that about wraps up the report. Right now, gold is $4,500 an ounce. Silver is $75 an ounce. I'd be getting me some while it was still low. They're suppressing the prices. That's a buying opportunity, right? Investors say, buy low, sell high. Buy the dip. People that invest are different from people who are concerned about legacy in a way. Investors, they sell, they buy, they follow the trends. People that's concerned about legacy, they look at silver and gold as wealth, not something to be bought and sold. Buy it, yes, but not to sell it off. They look at it as wealth because this is something they pass down to their posterity, their future generations. Silver, $75 an ounce. Gold is $4,500, somewhere around there. This is Saturday. Sunday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when the Forex markets open, because it's 5 o'clock p.m. our time on Sunday, but it's 8 o'clock in the morning on the other side of the world. That's when the Forex markets open. So that's when gold and silver prices often change. 5 o'clock Sunday or somewhere thereafter, and definitely by Monday morning. Will it change and go higher? We don't know, because the prices are being suppressed. But do what you think and know it's in the best interest of your family. This is a great opportunity to get some silver, get silver coins, get silver bullion, get an ounce, get a half an ounce, get grams, whatever you can get. 9.99 pure silver, a troy ounce is what they call an ounce, or grams, or get constitutional silver, which they erroneously call junk silver. You can go to a coin shop, say, I need some junk silver. I need some constitutional silver. That's 90% silver. Those are coins that were minted before 1965. If that's out of your budget, get sterling silver. That's 92% silver. You get sterling silverware, sterling silver jewelry, sterling silver utensils. All of your appliances, refrigerator, stove, washing machine, your cell phones, your computers, they all have silver in it. Your catalytic convertible. I don't know if it's a catalytic converter or catalytic convertible. I think it's catalytic converter in your car has silver and palladium in it. So if that's your value, or get gold. If you're trying to figure out a way to get gold that's affordable, if $4,500 is not in your budget, it's not in mine, you can get half and quarter of an ounce, grams. You can get gold RM notes, 24 karat gold pressed onto a note. Those are called gold backs. Get gold backs. Go to goldback.com. It'll tell you that it's legal tender. You can use it to buy local goods and services. Plug in your zip code to tell you which merchants recognize it in your state. So a lot is happening, family. But that Trump note coming out in June, and his birthday is in June, and he'll be 80 this month, in June, coming up in 2 days, in about 19 days, he'll be 80. 8 is the number of new beginnings, prosperity, money, abundance, wealth. These are all coded messages. Kevin Warsh, the Fed chair, says he promised unmatched prosperity. Family, we're here. This is why King's World's article says, and this came out February 2023, the world is rushing towards gold as money. The world. Not a state, not a person, the world. Including America. So if you want gold, you can go to your local your local coin shop. You can call my affiliate, Miles Franklin, at 952-929-7006 or send an email to info@milesfranklin.com. Let them know Dr. Kia Pruitt referred you. You heard about gold and silver from the Dr. Kia Pruitt show. You will get the best prices in the industry. A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, no customer complaints, over $9 billion in sales, been in business for over 40 years, 4 decades. 952-929-7006. That's Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company. Make sure you mention Dr. Kia Pruitt referred you. But I'm telling you, I'm not going to just tell you about my affiliate. I'm going to also tell you, you need a relationship with your local coin shop. I talked to somebody, she was like, Kia, I don't know if it's real though, if I get gold and silver from there. I don't know. I said, they do have a way that they can actually take it through certain procedures to ensure that it's real. But, they're not going to, these coin shops, they're not going to mess up their name over some fake coins. But, if you want to look at a Better Business Bureau, A+ rating company, Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company. 952-929-7006 or send an email to info@milesfranklin.com. Let them know Dr. Kia Pruitt referred you so you can get the best prices in the industry. Look at my videos with Andy Scheckman. He is the CEO and owner, a founder of Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company. We've done interviews together. We forecasted the world going back to the gold standard. We talked about 3 years ago the Iraqi dinar revaluing, making people wealthy. We talked about gold revaluing. I asked Andy Scheckman, the CEO of Miles Franklin, do you think gold will revalue? He said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Absolutely. And that makes sense. Because you have economists that said that in order to pay off the debts here in America, you have to revalue gold between $10,000 and $100,000 per ounce. It's only $4,500. That's a lot. But then think about the gold that President Trump did the inventory of in Fort Knox. It was $42, an ounce back when it was put in Fort Knox. The last time it was, then inventory was taken. How now at $300 an ounce? And that's not even a real value. That's a lot of wealth we have here in America. Then they also did the inventory of the gold in the Grand Canyon, which is Egypt, that part. Why you can't even go there anymore. They have, mummies there, pyramids, coffins, all that, all our history. Gold flowing around the Colorado River. We're very, very wealthy, as are other nations. But remember, not only do we have gold, silver, palladium, platinum, many of those mines you couldn't even mine because you had to go through a lot of red tape. But with the overturning of the Chevron doctrine, the government can't even tell you can't mine on the land anymore. They lost their power. But we also discovered 3 years ago, what was it, 2.3 million tons of rare earth minerals, the largest amount of rare earth minerals in the world, which now puts us above China in rare earth minerals. Everything started here in America. This is the land flowing with milk and honey. The Garden of Eden is in Florida. You can look it up. Orisha Stone, who creates my jewelry, my jeweler, my personal jeweler. Follow him on the Orisha Stone, ORISHASTONE. Follow his show on YouTube. Get in contact with him so he can create you some jewelry, some stones, some necklaces, some ankhs, some earrings, some rings, some bracelets. He said, look it up, Dr. Pruitt. The Garden of Eden is in Florida. He's from Florida. He knew. I was like, what? I looked it up. It says the Garden of Eden is in Florida and told you the region of Florida. This is the land of milk and honey. It's where everything started. Everything started here. Everything ends here. So the Americans will have things returned back to them. The chiefs on the lands are back in control. The military is working on behalf of the chiefs, along with matriarchs, along with chiefs, because you can't even become a chief or a king until the matriarchs identify you as such. That's our tribal way, I should say. So The good thing about everything being returned back to the indigenous autogenous people here on the lands, misclassified as Black, Negro, African American, is that now we'll be able to return back to our tribal way, our communal way. We'll be able to do away with licenses. That's why all this is being overturned. You don't need a license to be in a covenant relationship with somebody. That came from kings who wanted to control population. They would control who could mate, and they called it a FUCK license. That whole word effing stands for fornication under consent of the king. You had to get a license in order to procreate. That evolved into being called a marriage license. You had to buy it. And only the king could sanction certain relations because they were trying to control population. That evolved into states saying, hey, we can make money if we control who can and cannot get married. It was all about control. But then they were like, forget trying to control who can and can't make babies and get married. This FUCK license, fornication under consent of the king, is powerful because now we can, because we used to practice common law, but it was against interracial marriage was unlawful. But they were like, we're going to create laws now to say if they wanted these different races, that the blacks and the whites want, the people we brought over here to colonize them, they want to mate with these indigenous people, make babies and get married, we're going to charge them. So people start paying for it. So states start saying, hey, we can all make money. We're going to all make everybody get a FUCK license, fornication under consent of the king. We will involve ourselves in their covenant agreement. They're going to pay us some money. That's a way for us as states, as corporate entities, to make money. We can control the division of their assets, what they do in their marriage, what they do to their children. We'll control their children through the birth certificate bond. If and when they divorce or separate, hey, we can make money through their divorce decree, that paper. And we can control their assets. And that evolved into making everybody pay child support, accessing your trust to pay themselves first, then to pay you. It's all about control and money. Follow the money. We're going to go back to our tribal ways. We don't need a license to fish on our own lands and our own ponds. We don't need a license to travel. We don't do commercial, most of us. So we're not driving, we're traveling. We don't need a license to die and get a death certificate bond, or a license to get baptized, or a license or security or something becoming securitized, to have a death certificate or a birth certificate or a marriage certificate, or a license to cater, or a license to do this and a license to do that. We're going to go back to tribal ways. That's why everything's being returned. It's going right back to constitutional law, which is really common law based on indigenous ways. But that freedom for us is freedom for everybody. Because once we're free and you're on the lands, you're going to abide by common law. They call it constitutional law right for now, or the republic, but it's going to eventually be called common law, tribal ways. And the good thing about the tribes is, even though people mistreated us, talked about us, stole our land, did all these kind of things. The government did all these things to us. Everything's being reversed. And as Chief Rod Hayes said, they know who we all are. They know where we all reside. They're going to return everything back. And we're just people, because if we weren't, we would have been burned down people's businesses that were in our community. We would have been burnt down the convenience stores and the gas stations that got government money to put junk food in their coffers and say this is a food desert and feeding us all this poison. We would have been. You think we don't know where police officers live? Like, come on, we got gangsters. I never understood the gangsters that's so gangster that they unaliving each other. I'm like, don't y'all see these people that's enslaving us and mistreating us? What y'all doing? But all I'm saying is, why don't y'all establish a militia? That's lawful. But they didn't. Or maybe they did, and then they were intercepted. Just like protesters are intercepted by Black Lives Matter and Antifa. But my point is, if we were not just and loving and compassionate, we'd have burned all these businesses down. We'd have gone back and taken our stuff back. We haven't forgotten. We know who we are. We know it's our land. We are so just. We're sitting back and letting the government that enslaved us and let all these people in take care of their business. It's not our fight, even though all this was about us and our wealth. The ancestors have returned. They're guiding the hands of the people in power and President Donald Trump and the military. This is why Pope Francis, in his letter Motu Proprio that he sent to President Obama, he said we must cease and desist. And if we do not, read the letter, the Grand Army of the Republic will be formed with General Ham at the forefront to take us down. All policy enforcers, all government officials, all court officials, all attorneys, all judges, all of them must cease and desist. He said it. And if we don't, we'll be forced to stand down by the Grand Army of the Republic. So, family, that's it. A lot happened. June is here in 2 days. It's an era of prosperity. The number of abundance is resonating and vibrating on a high frequency right now. Get in, get in, get in, get in. In this abundance frequency, put hashtag freedom now in the comment section because we're getting our freedom, prosperity, peace, and wealth back. Hashtag freedom now, not freedom yesterday, not freedom today or freedom tomorrow, freedom in the present moment right now. We speak it, therefore it is. Abracadabra, I manifest as I speak. My name is Dr. Kia Pruitt. You saw Chuck-a-Luck in the comments, the bassist, the professional from Earth, Wind, and Fire. You saw Sister Janine in the comment section. You saw yourselves in the comment section and each other in the comment section. I hope that I've said something to raise your vibrations and inspire you to create the most amazing, magnificent life that you desire and deserve. Go out and have a great night, family, a great evening. And remember, it's Saturday night. Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when things change. You might go to sleep on a Sunday and wake up Monday morning to a whole new reality. Peace, family. I love you, and I'll talk to you soon. In the membership group, we're going to have a meeting around 10 or 11 o'clock a.m. Sunday morning. If that doesn't jive, what you put it in the comment section. Family, if you want to join our section, our membership only section, hit join on any of our videos or go to my Dr. Kia Pruitt show on this YouTube channel. Click join. Tomorrow we're going to do a Q&A. We'll be able to ask any questions about any foreign currency, gold, silver, what's happening behind the scenes, what's happening in other nations, anything. It's going to be a Q&A section. So I see you sometime in the morning, probably around 10 a.m. That's when most people are on. Hit that join button if you want to join the membership group. I love you all, and thank you for being my reflection. I see you in me, and I love you just as I love myself, which is very much. Peace, family. Good night.